Welcome back to my YouTube. Here's T the cat and me, and I'm not sure exactly what chapter I'm going to talk about in my book, but I know that I want to talk about something in my book. So this is the book. It's called Legality, the Religion of Love. It's kind of a play on words, and it's not like actually trying to start a religion. Really, what the main goal is to find ways for all religions to be able to work together more, for people who follow different religions to be able to find common ground more, and for just everyone, no matter who they are, to be like less polarized from each other. So, what will I talk about today? Do you want more treats? Okay, I bring him. No, I'm paying him his salary, basically. So, yeah. Let's talk about trigger warnings. It's gonna sound so liberal, progressive of me, whatever those words even mean anymore. But, the terminology guide on page 12. Okay, actually, this is like one of my drafts that I sent to myself, so I'm kind of worried that I changed the page of the terminology guide, but nonetheless, I will tell you in the table of contents. So, why don't I just say like the description of the guide, and then that will give a little better idea. This guide is in reverse alphabetical order for the purpose of defining trigger warning first. I am providing this guide in order to explain the use of certain words. For example, the use of they instead of stereotypical pronouns in order to recognize the importance of people's preferred pronouns. I also use this terminology guide for the purpose of explaining that there will be trigger warnings throughout my writings. I believe in the importance of the use of trigger warnings in order for humanity to progress in a more loving, safe, and healthy direction. So, term number 1, trigger warning. This is a phrase that I use after a chapter title or before a term if I feel there is sensitive content and topics that can potentially bring up unideal emotions. A trigger warning allows a reader or listener to have a moment to decide if they want to stop tuning into the book or skip ahead to another chapter, based on what they read or hear in the trigger warning. I said in to hear because there's an audiobook too. Which, side note, I am pretty embarrassed about, so I might get that recreated. To clarify and give extra prior notification, I will say here that terms number 3 and number 4 have trigger warnings. In regard to chapters, there are trigger warnings in 11 out of the 45 chapters. As a symbolic conclusion to this term's definition, here is a reminder about where you will see the first trigger warning. The first trigger warning is before term number 3, so in approximately 2 pages. In addition, I will provide a complete list of which terms and chapters have trigger warnings on the following page. And then I provide this page with a more clear list of which chapters have those warnings. While I was reading that, when I was reading this part about 11 out of 45 chapters, I decided to take those two numbers and calculate the percent. So what percent of 45 would amount to 11, and that percentage is 24%. Well, technically it's 24.44%. And what I was thinking and theorizing is that in real life, when we're having conversations with others, when we're encountering just anyone in our lives, I would say that about that same percentage of time, there are conversations that are unideal to us, and there's a part of us that wishes we could say I don't have the capacity for this, or this is like on a subconscious level, someone may feel like it could trigger something that they really don't want to be thinking about. And so in the same conversation, I feel that the phrase trigger warning is a bit problematic, and hopefully it evolves at some point, but that's just kind of how it has appeared in our world, like as this phrase trigger warning. And I think the concept is very beautiful. I think it can potentially create a lot of safety that is really needed in this world. It's kind of like a random theory to put out there just based off of reading this chapter that I wrote, or this guide that I wrote. But yeah, perhaps 11 out of 45 conversations, because I say 11 out of 45 chapters, but maybe even 11 out of 45 conversations, like as a ratio, throughout our lives are conversations that we could really go without, It's interesting because from personal experience, I know that some conversations, even though they're difficult, they still are needed if it is going to be conducive to a relationship or to a group, if and only when it's going to help create more healthy love in those dynamics. Now, if there's a conversation that's unideal, that would literally go against that concept of healthy love, so it would in essence lead to unhealthy love, I think that everyone has the right to kind of imply in their energy of what they say, I deserve to have a warning about what you're about to say. I think humans forget, and I'm sure I've been guilty of this in the past, and I just try really, really intensely to stay in the present moment with this. I feel humans must remember that not everyone wants to talk about the things that you want to talk about, and everyone has so many different backgrounds and experiences that there needs to be a preface to a lot of topics that are brought up sort of randomly. And I think it's always good to ask someone like, hey, can I talk about this? And it's almost like not enough to even ask that. I think you kind of have to give them the space. Like, you kind of have to say, can we talk about this? And it's completely fine if you don't want to, because I would also love to talk about this other thing too. You know? Like, that sounds so much nicer, like if you were being approached like that. So I'm also imagining in a workplace, I think this issue happens a lot where someone is at their desk. They're essentially kind of trapped there. I know that's like really sad to use that word, but you know, you're like at your desk, and if the culture of that work environment is that people can walk up to you whenever they have a question or like task, then I think there's an issue of, in that same dynamic, people bringing up topics that are unideal. And if someone's at work trying to make a living, it's really not kind. It's really unkind to bring up topics that, especially that are not work related, and then you're not even saying, is it okay if we talk about this? I think that should always be, I guess, the standard. And even to go above and beyond that would be exceptional, would be even more healthy love, let's call it. So after I describe the guide and talk about how I would define trigger warning, I go on to discuss various terms that are in the book. As a symbolic way to close this video, I want to essentially, I guess, give a trigger warning about my book, because the things that I've talked about so far about my book have been, I would say, more of the lighthearted topics, and there are topics in this book that, there's topics in these books that could bring up unideal emotions, and that's why I really love putting in the guide. I really love putting in the terminology guide. I really love describing the terms in my own words, and I love to specify throughout the book that I care about the emotions of the readers, the emotions of the audience. So I think that's where I'll end the video. Yeah, see you in my next video.